Hey, good to see you this week. We're going to be taking a look at a rather interesting lens option for shooting video on the Canon EOS R5. This is not a new lens. As a matter of fact, it's been around since about 2013. It's made by Sigma, variable zoom, focal length range of 18 to 35 millimeter with a maximum aperture of f1.8, which if you know anything about variable zooms is huge. Usually to get anything above f2, you have to go out and buy some prime lenses. Well, somehow, some way, back in 2013, Sigma figured out a way to get a maximum aperture of f1.8 throughout the entire focal length range of 18 to 35 millimeter in one variable zoom. Now, there is one wrinkle with this lens, and that is the fact that it is an APS-C lens. It is designed for crop sensor cameras. But because this lens has an EF mount, you can technically mount it on any full frame camera that you want, including a brand new mirrorless camera like the R5. So why would anyone in their right mind use a crop sensor lens designed for much smaller sensors on a large full frame sensor like the one found in the R5? Well, that's what we're going to get into, and I'm going to tell you why. Stick around. Good to see you. Glad you're here. My name is Todd. I make videos here on YouTube about photography. We're going to get into the Sigma lens here in just a moment, but I want to begin this video with a giveaway. This is a black mist diffusion filter. It's part of a new line of mist diffusion filters being made by K&F Concept. Now, these filters have been around in filmmaking for many, many years, but they've experienced somewhat of a resurgence over the past couple of years. Some companies call them mist filters, some people call them glow or bloom filters, but they're all basically doing the same exact thing. They are like special effect filters that you put on the front of your lens, and they help kind of take a little bit of that digital edge off of your camera sensor, because as digital technology evolves and cameras get sharper and sharper and with higher levels of detail and clarity, I think something gets a little lost along the way. It's almost like too much of a good thing, especially when photographing a subject like this, and perhaps you start to see pores and wrinkles and lights just don't have the same kind of atmospheric glow to them. And these also help with highlight roll-off as well. They soften some of those highlights, which makes them especially nice for shooting outdoors in the daytime. I also like using these for photography, especially when shooting neon. I did some of that in a recent video here on this channel. But these are really nice. I mean, there are some videographers and filmmakers that just always shoot with one of these attached to the front of their lens. So if you are interested in this filter, if you would like to win one of these, I will leave a link below in the description. All you have to do is click on that link, head over to my website. So yeah, thanks to K&F Concept for supporting this channel and for providing me with two of these filters so I get to keep one and give the other one away. All right, so let's get back to talking about the Sigma 18 to 35 f1.8. Over here I have, this is a full frame Canon 5D DSLR. This is my old 5D that I've used for pretty much everything for years and years before I upgraded to the R5. Now, what happens when you try to take photographs with this lens attached is that the lens, because it's a crop sensor lens, is expecting a sensor inside the camera that is much smaller. Then you try to take some photos with it and you look at the photos later and you will see massive amounts of vignette, just this like dark edge all the way around the corners of your image. The lens just simply isn't able to fully resolve an image onto the larger full frame sensor of the camera. But what's interesting about the EOS R5 compared to the 5D Mark IV is that the R5 recognizes the APS-C lens when it is attached. It sees that it is an APS-C lens and it automatically enables a 1.6 crop setting for aspect ratio. Now, the nice thing about this on the R5 is that then there's nothing to crop out in post. You can, take images. The images that come off the camera are clean, though they are much, much smaller. I mean, those images are only about 18 megapixels because they've been cropped compared to the full frame sensor, the full frame capabilities of the camera, which is about 45 megapixels. So you are losing a lot of data and your images will then be much smaller. That might be okay if you are, say, like a wildlife photographer and you want to use that 1.6 times crop in order to punch in and to get in order to effectively increase the focal length of your lens to get closer to your subject. And 18 megapixels is all you really want anyway, because perhaps you're just publishing images online and 18 megapixels is enough. then yeah, maybe it won't be that big of a deal. But for me, I mean, if I'm shooting on a full frame camera and I'm doing still photography, I want to be shooting with a full frame lens. So for me, using the 18 to 35 millimeter Sigma is kind of a non-starter for still photography. But as I said earlier, video on this lens is a completely different story. So why is this crop sensor variable zoom lens from Sigma a good choice for shooting video on a full frame mirrorless camera like the Canon EOS R5? Well, the first reason is aperture. As I mentioned earlier, this variable zoom has a maximum aperture of f1.8 throughout its entire focal length range, which means you're able to shoot video with this lens in low light. And when you're able to open that aperture all the way up to f1.8, you're able to lower your ISO values down, perhaps even shoot at the native ISO if you're shooting in C-Log, and then you're able to get cleaner footage. It has less noise in it. And when you have that large aperture, it just gives you more flexibility. It means that you can take this lens outside. You could be shooting outdoors with it in broad daylight and just stop it down. And then if you go indoors and you need to open it back up, you're able to do so. You can open it all the way up to f1.8 and use it just as you would like a prime lens, but you don't have to switch lenses. You can just keep this one on your camera all the time. Additionally, of course, the larger the aperture, the more depth of field you have, the more bokeh you have, especially when you're focusing on a subject that's close to the camera. It just helps blow out the background just a little bit more behind your subject. Second reason that 18 to 35 is a compelling choice for video on the R5 is because it is a variable zoom lens, unlike a prime lens, which has a single fixed focal length, where say you wanted to tighten your composition or make it a little bit wider. Well, if your camera's mounted on a tripod, you have to physically move the camera with a prime lens in order to change your composition. That 18 to 35 millimeter focal length is converted into its full frame 35 millimeter equivalency, which is 27 to 53 millimeters when this is mounted on a full frame camera, which is a standard, very usable focal length range for shooting video because you can shoot everything from just slightly wide angle at 27 millimeters, you can shoot at 35, you can shoot at 50, or any focal length in between. Oftentimes that 35 millimeter equivalency, that conversion of focal length from APS-C to full frame, sometimes, well, actually more often than not, it doesn't work out in your favor. But 18 to 35 just happens to convert into a very usable focal length range for shooting video. But the third and perhaps best reason why this Sigma 18 to 35 millimeter is a compelling choice for video on the R5 is because this lens takes full advantage of the R5's movie cropping mode. Now, this movie cropping mode is somewhat mysterious, and you don't see a lot of people talking about this, especially when the R5 first came out. I think everyone was focused on just vanilla 4K and high quality 4K, and they were talking about 8K RAW, of course. But I think a lot of people skipped over movie cropping and specifically 4K crop mode because, I don't know, maybe it's like bad memories of the past when, cameras like this 5D Mark IV here, you could only shoot 4K in a cropped mode, which kind of sucked. But with the R5, you're able to take full advantage of the sensor. So I think a lot of people just kind of ignored the 4K crop mode. So when you mount an APS-C lens like the Sigma 18 to 35 on the R5, put the R5 in video mode and then go into the menu, you will notice that movie cropping has been automatically set to enable by the camera. Behind the scenes, and the R5 does a pretty poor job, I think, from a user experience perspective of explaining this, is that when movie cropping is enabled, the R5 is then in what is known as 4K crop mode. 4K crop video oversamples a cropped 8K image in order to create the final 4K video. In other words, cropped 8K is equal to 5.1K, so it is oversampling 5.1K video to create 4K. Now, this can be really confusing because 4K HQ is disabled, so you may be led to believe that the camera is just shooting in regular vanilla 4K, which you have watched other videos about with the R5. You may be aware It's just really not that good. There's like pixel binning and line skipping going on. The oversampling modes, the high quality modes, where it oversamples 8K to create 4K, or in the case of movie cropping, 5.1K to 4K, is far better. And to be honest, to my eyes, when I look at the two side by side, there is very little difference, in my opinion, between oversampled 5.1K compared to oversampled 8K in that final 4K image. Last but certainly not least, that 4K crop mode does not cause the R5 to overheat when recording video internally. Again, this is something you've probably heard about with the R5, where eventually if you're shooting in either 8K or high quality 4K on the camera, eventually the camera will overheat, and Canon has been putting out some firmware updates to try and make this better. However, I don't know, maybe oversampling 5.1K to create 4K is just less processor intensive than 8K to 4K. But hey, for whatever reason, 4K crop video does not cause the R5 to overheat. So you can shoot all the 4K crop video that you want with nearly the same image quality that you get in that 4K HQ mode. To clarify, you don't have to use an APS-C crop sensor lens in order to take advantage of the R5's 4K crop video mode. You can do it with a full frame lens as well. You just have to go into the menu and enable movie cropping yourself, and then you're shooting in that 4K crop mode. It's just that with an APS-C lens, when you attach it, the R5 just turns it all on for you automatically. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the downsides of the Sigma 18 to 35 millimeter. Some of the things to be aware of if you are considering this lens for video on the R5. The main thing to know, and the main downside of this lens, in my opinion, is its size and weight. This is a chunky lens. It is heavy. It weighs nearly 2 pounds. In addition to the weight of the lens, something else to be kind of aware of is the fact that in order to mount this lens on the R5, you're going to need an EF to RF mount adapter. I made an entirely separate video about this topic covering adapters made by Canon, by Viltrox, and Breakthrough Photography. So if you'd be interested in checking out that video, I'll link to it up here and down below in the description as well. But I bring it up because not only does it just add to your cost, because if you don't already have an adapter, you're going to need one to use this lens, but it also just protrudes the lens further out from the narrow R5 mirrorless body, which could be a bit of an issue when attempting to balance the camera body and lens if you were setting this up on a gimbal. It's just not compact at all when it is protruding out from the front of the R5. So final thoughts here on the Sigma 18 to 35 millimeter for the purposes of shooting video on the R5. Well, I think in general, the positives far outweigh the negatives. I mean, yeah, it is chunky, it's bulky, it's kind of heavy. It might get a little tiresome after a while when shooting handheld. However, I mean, in a lot of ways, this feels like the video equivalent of the Canon 24 to 70 millimeter f2.8 variable zoom. And this feels like the video equivalent of that because you have a nice range of focal lengths, of standard focal lengths to choose from, 27 to 53 millimeter. And I love the fact that when it comes to shooting 4K video on the R5, it's nowhere near as crippled as doing still photography, where with still photography, you get that huge drop in resolution from like 45 to 18 megapixels. But with 4K video, it's nearly indistinguishable from shooting in 4K HQ using a full frame lens. Oh, and yeah, it's a Sigma art lens, by the way. And Sigma art lenses are known for their sharpness and image quality. And I own a few of their Sigma art lenses, and I love them because they have sharpness that rivals like Canon L professional lenses, except these lenses oftentimes cost far less than Canon lenses, especially those new RF lenses. So yeah, if you're looking for a do-it-all lens for shooting video on the R5, it's kind of hard to beat the Sigma 18 to 35 millimeter, especially at this price. Speaking of price, if you want to check the current price of this lens, I will leave links below to Amazon and B&H and Adorama, all that down below in the description if you want to check it out new at retail. I'll also put a link in there for used versions of this over at eBay because, as I said earlier, this is an older lens from 2013, so wouldn't surprise me if you found a good deal on a used one. Oh, and remember, I am giving away a black mist diffusion filter made by K&F Concept. This is a new line of diffusion filters made by them. Below in the video description is a link to where you jump over to my website, enter your email address for the contest. Your email address will be kept private, and I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to use it for anything else. You're not signing up for a newsletter or any of that stuff. It's just for this contest. So hit the link, go over to the website, enter your information. I appreciate your time and attention. As always, thanks for being here, everyone. See you next time.